Welcome to Caffeinated Flicks. I'm Celeste.
And I'm Kenzie. We're two chicks who drink coffee
and celebrate flicks from diverse directors.
If you like what you're hearing so far, take a moment to follow us in your favorite podcasting app.
And give us a rating or review. Here's the show.
Sometimes when I dance while I'm sitting, I feel like a Muppet. I feel like I should be in a Muppet movie.
A Muppet movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just the way that I dance.
I don't think I've ever actually seen the Muppet movies.
Maybe yeah. Have you ever seen just the Muppets in general?
I wasn't a fan. So, I mean, if I watched it, it's not by my doing.
You're like, it was just on in the background
exactly.
and I wasn't paying attention. Yeah. Oh, gosh. So how are you today?
Good. This morning, because I have a free drink at Union. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to get my free drink today. I decided to go on my lunch midday because I was like, oh, I'll be in and out. Oh, that place was so busy. And then on top of that, the lady at the front was like an elderly woman. And I forgot my phone. So I asked the lady in front of me, I'm like, I'm so sorry. What time is it? And she told me the time and I was like, oh my God, I need to leave already. So I drove all the way there, didn't even get my coffee, and came back.
Oh, no.
I was so salty. So then I was like, I'm getting a coffee today. So 10 minutes later, I left again. Then I went to Black Rock. So
that luckily is right around the corner from you.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to get into the coffee. So I had a peppermint bark soy latte.
You do love your peppermint mocha type things.
Do. I love peppermint. I love mocha, so
it's
delicious.
It's a marriage in heaven. Very cool. Well, I'm sorry that you weren't able to get your free coffee at Union. I feel like I must go there so infrequently that like I build points, but never enough to actually get anything.
Yeah, because it's so far from you. So that
it's so far
a lot of sense. It's like the only local coffee that's actually like semi close to me though.
Right.
Everything else is a drive.
Yeah.
I do what I can.
I get that. Cool. I had just like coffee from my coffee pot today.
Good for you.
But it was one of the blends of coffee that we got when we were in Oregon. It's called like 747 or something like that. It's interesting.
Ooh, yummy.
Yeah. Couldn't even tell you what kind of blend it is because I don't remember.
That's okay. Coffee's coffee.
Yeah. I got up early so that way I could do the notes for this. And I was like, okay, a little bit of coffee now, focused on this.
Had you seen this movie before though?
I had not. Had you?
Oh no, I hadn't either. It makes it. I feel like for note taking, it makes it easier when you are already familiar with the movie,
right?
But when it's like fresh, it's more time consuming.
A little bit, especially a movie like this. Oh my gosh, it wasn't actually all that time consuming. To be fair, it was just hilarious.
A lot
honestly.
going on. Yeah,
there's so much going on in this movie. So I apologize if it's a little more jumbled than usual. Yeah. So shall we get into the director then?
Yes, let's do it.
Awesome. So our director is Lisa Cholodenko. I'm going to hope that I said that right. And it's probably
I don't think we said what movie it was though.
So today's movie is The Kids Are All Right from 2010.
Yeah.
From 2010. And the director is Lisa Cholodenko. And she was born on June 5th of 1964 in Los Angeles, California. And she earned her Master's of Fine Arts at Columbia University Film School, where she made an award-winning short film, Dinner Party, in 1997. Her feature highlight was High Art in 1998 and won the National Society of Film Critics Award for Ali Sheedy's performance and the Waldo Saltz Screenwriting Award at Sundance. Both High Art and Laurel Canyon in 2002 premiered at Cannes Directors Fortnight. a lot of words that I'm not entirely sure what they are, honestly. So she also directed 3 actors into their Emmy award-winning performances in Olive Kitteridge. I don't know. Olive Kitteridge. And those 3 actors were Bill Murray, Frances McDormand, and Richard Jenkins, which I believe Frances McDormand was a Nomad, right?
Yep. That was the way for Nomad. Yep. Nomadland.
Nomadland. That's the one. Today's cast, we have a star-studded cast for what feels like a very indie movie. We've got Julianne Moore, who plays a character by the name of Jules, Annette Bening, who plays Nick, which is short for Nicole, Mark Ruffalo, who plays Paul, Josh Hutcherson, who plays Laser, Mia Wasikowska, I'm hoping that's right, who plays Joni, Yaya DaCosta, who plays Tanya, Eddie Hassel, who plays Clay, and a couple of others who are not all that terribly important. So some fun trivia is that Julianne Moore actually received the script and agreed to star in this film 5 years before filming began. So that's quite the investment.
Yeah, she was.
Hold on, I gotta let Tiny in.
That was perfect because Billy just started blasting Christmas music. So I was just about to tell him to
pumped to.
That's what he has been lately, yeah.
It's like you two were made for each other. Another fun fact is Ewan McGregor was originally casted to play Paul. Now, I think that Mark Ruffalo is extremely sexy in this movie.
He's a gorgeous man. He's rough on the edges. I think he's a beautiful man.
This was like peak hotness for Mark Ruffalo. But just to say it, like, Ewan McGregor, he was my number one crush for so long. So I probably still would have died had I seen Ewan McGregor in this too. So, yeah. So should we get into the ratings then?
Yes, let's do it.
Do it.
All right, I'll go ahead and do the 10 out of 10 then. So 10 out of 10. Listen to all the critics on this one. Critics are sometimes wrong, but they are right on this one. This movie is brilliantly written and beautifully acted/directed. My husband and I laughed so hard together with all other audience members most of the time, but yet I teared up during the emotional moments. And leaving the theaters, I resonated a lot with the story and actually felt a bit more hopeful and positive and had a smile on my face. Performance-wise, I just love Benning's performance, but it is an ensemble piece and all cast members did a great job. The last movie that made me cry and laugh was The Last Station, but that movie felt a bit too heavy. This one is much more lighthearted and witty. Really something worth seeing. Highly recommended. I've never heard of The Last Train Station?
I haven't either. The Last Station? Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
This person has a whole set of characteristics that they rate movies on that I am unfamiliar with. If they're comparing it to something called The Last Station. And to be fair, we'll get into it later, but I don't necessarily agree with either rating.
Oh, okay.
But the 1 out of 10 could have been a very good movie if it wasn't for its sexist ending. I really loved this movie until the middle. It actually could have been one of my favorite movies, but near the end, the story went into a terribly wrong direction in a way that I felt a strong man-hating vibe behind it. Maybe it was the director or writer, I don't know. But whatever the reason, I am sorry. The story was so strange that it made the movie very disturbing for me. All right, I definitely don't agree with that.
Yeah,
there wasn't a man-hating vibe at the end.
I didn't feel that vibe. I don't know. Again, were they watching the same movie? Who knows?
I don't know. Maybe they just stopped somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah,
some weird. I don't know. I got nothing. Anyway, shall we get into our notes then for The Kids Are All Right?
Yes, let's do it.
Awesome. We open on Laser and Joni hanging out with their friends. Laser has a friend named Clay, who's a total tool, and Joni has two friends. One who's a very quiet boy who they both clearly like each other, and then one is her friend Sasha, who is very sex positive, but very vocal about it in a way that is just
she is
annoying.
Yes, she is.
So later that evening, Joni and Laser are at dinner with their moms, Jules and Nick. And we come to find out that Jules has bought a truck to start a landscaping business. We also find out that Joni has just turned 18 and that she's graduated high school. After dinner, Laser goes out into the backyard where Joni is sitting, writing out some thank you cards, presumably for the gifts that she got for her graduation. And Laser asks Joni if she's thought more about making that call. We don't know what that call is yet, but she says, I don't know. I don't really want to. And he says, but you're 18. You can do it. I'm only 15. I can't do it for a while yet. And she's like, I don't know. I'll think about it.
So, like, comment on at the beginning when Jules bought a truck. Presumably Nick didn't know, or at least that's how it appeared. She was like, because she sits down, she's like, whose truck is that? She's like, oh, it's mine. Like, how do you just go out and buy a vehicle and not have any discussion about it? Like, who does that?
That I can't tell you. Or to like start a business without telling somebody. Like, that is an involved process.
Right? From the beginning, I was like, no. I don't like this. I don't.
Yeah, there's a very interesting dynamic. Each person has their very strong character personalities.
Yes.
And Nick apparently is like a doctor of some sort. She might be like a maternity ward doctor or something like that, because she's talking later to one of her clients about going into labor. But
maybe
Jules doesn't necessarily have a job, and she's a lot more free flowing and a little bit more softer around the edges than Nick is. And then Laser's a 15-year-old boy who's very, I'm trying to think what the word is. He's not necessarily angry, maybe just angsty. I think he's just got that teen angstiness to him.
Moody teen, yeah.
Yeah, the moody teen.
Yeah, it opened
thing
with him like
on.
doing drugs. He's very easily.
Yes. Yeah. His friend Clay took like some kind of pill and like crushed it up, and then they snorted it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And a dollar bill, which is gross. Because dollars.
There's so much dirt and grossness on dollars.
Every time I see cash or like ones or fives or tens, I think about the fact that they've probably been in like a stripper's butt crack or like crotch or somewhere gross and sweaty near genitals, and it just really grosses me out. So the fact that they were like putting it near their nose and their face, I was like,
So I guess if Celeste were to ever do that, it'd have to be with crisp dollar bills straight from the bank.
A fresh dollar bill. Yeah.
Right off the printer.
If it's not, don't invite me. I don't want nothing to do with it.
So as I was saying, Joni is also just a little bit more reserved, and she's 18. She's trying to figure out what it means to be an adult throughout the movie. So after Laser and Joni's conversation about this mysterious call, Jules and Nick are in bed. Nick talks to Jules about this truck some more. She's talking down to her about having bought this truck and about this business that she's supposed to be starting. But then they decide to, quote unquote, watch a movie. And Jules is like, oh, do you mean a movie? Which translates to porn. So they start watching some gay porn, and with the sound off. They start watching gay porn with the sound off, and they begin to have sex. But there's a lot of random sex in this movie, and it's all awkward.
All of it. None of
all of it is
actually
awkward.
Sexy.
It's literally just like so out there, like, nope, gonna have it right now in the most awkward way possible.
Yes.
And so this was one of those where apparently Jules was underneath the covers. And that's one of the things in movies that I don't understand. Like how to have sex underneath a comforter. I don't think that happens. I don't think that happens in real life because that's so goddamn hot. And especially if your head's underneath there and you're trying to breathe, it's not happening.
That
So
was the
I don't believe that
problem
for a
here, though.
second.
She couldn't breathe.
That was part of the problem. She moved some of the comforter and Nick's like, but I'm cold. And she's like, but I can't breathe. So anyway, they accidentally turn the sound back on right as Joni is going through some folders and finds her donor folder, and Jules and Nick freak out and they turn it off as fast as humanly possible. So now we cut to Paul, who's the very handsome Mark Ruffalo, at a farm, a co-op farm that he owns, where he's picking up some of the vegetables from the farm itself. He then drives it back to his restaurant, and this is where he gets a call from the cryobank. Joni has called the cryobank where their donor sperm had come from. That's so many puns in it. Where the donor sperm came from. And the lady on the phone, Wendy, is asking if it's okay that she put the donor sperm child in contact with him. And he says yes. So later that night, this is another very awkward sex scene where Paul is having sex with one of his coworkers, Tanya. And literally it's just like throwing each other around. Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand where actual sex came
It all
in.
looked really uncomfortable.
It did. You do get a peek at Mark Ruffalo's side butt though, and that was quite nice.
You're like, that made it all worth it.
Exactly. So afterwards, he's talking to Tanya and says that he's thinking about making contact. So later on, maybe the next day or something like that, Joni and Jules are outside on their back patio playing Scrabble, and Joni gets a phone call to find out that it's Paul. And this is where Paul says, hey, I'd like to meet you. And she says, okay. So she tells Paul specifically that she also has a brother who's 15 and that their moms were both pregnant with his sperm donation. So technically, Laser is her half brother. Joni and Laser go to meet up with Paul, and Paul's pretty excited / nervous about meeting them, and they're also pretty excited / nervous. And so it's that typical awkward first meeting of a very important person who is technically biologically your family, but you've never really known about them before, so you want to figure out where that line is. So Joni tells him that she just graduated high school and she's going to be attending college soon. And Laser talks about his sports, and he's done basketball and soccer and lots of different team sports.
It's so awkward, but also like, he's like, so do you have like any questions? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
How do you not come prepared? Because they're the ones that wanted to meet him. Like, you would think.
Well,
maybe
specifically
just
Laser.
Laser, exactly. It was Laser that wanted to meet him. He's like, no, I don't have anything to ask. Excuse me? Why are nothing? You have nothing to ask? It was just like, I hate everyone in this movie.
I can't imagine that I would be in this situation, mostly because I've done 23andMe and I am directly related to my dad and I am directly related to my mom because I also have my brother's information in there too. And so it says that we all have the same relations.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what? I'm confused what you're saying.
So you've heard about like the DNA like trees and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my dad for Christmas one year bought all of me, my brother, him, and then my husband, 23andMe. Well, Richard didn't want to do it, so he gave it to Brant. And so you submit.
It's a lineage thing?
It's that, yeah. Like, so what you do is you provide some spit and you send it back in, and then they analyze the DNA to see where your lineage is essentially and see how many like other random relatives you have that are like third or fourth cousins removed on whichever side, and shows you like how far back your lineage goes and like what percentage of like what genetics you are. And
oh gosh.
but yeah, so I'm for sure my dad's daughter And both of my brothers are my brothers with the same mother, and Morgan and I have the same dad. And
Well, thank goodness. That would be an
I
awkward
know.
way to find out.
A lot of people find out that way, honestly. Like that happens all too often. But I had no doubts.
sad.
I had absolutely no doubts whatsoever. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. But anyway, so I can't imagine like going and meeting somebody who's like your biological dad who you never knew about and just being like, so this is awkward, isn't it?
Right?
What do we talk about?
I know. I would Google it. What to ask from Joan. Because to just show up without anything, like to not
That's true.
like and have anything prepared. Like, what is the point of this meeting?
Yeah. I don't know. Some people just like knowing that people exist. I couldn't tell you.
I guess.
Anyway, they happen to have lunch at Paul's restaurant, and he tells them about his restaurant and his career in the food industry and the local co-op farm that he has up the street. And so they get along and make some small talk, and then they say goodbye after lunch is over. And when Laser and Joni are in the car, Joni thinks that he's cool and interesting, and Laser thinks that he's all right, but a little too into himself. But they both agree not to tell their moms. At home, Jules and Nick are watching TV when Laser says that he's going to go hang out with Clay. After he leaves, they discuss whether or not Laser is quote unquote exploring with Clay. And they're like, well, we should be okay with it, right? Like if that's what he wants to do. And the only problem is specifically from Nick that Clay has absolutely no ambitions and isn't doing anything good for Laser. And he really isn't. This guy is
he is a loser.
yeah, loser of the highest order. But then Nick and Jules get into a little bit of a tiff. So they have a little bit of a spat with one another because Jules feels like she's always being criticized by Nick for not living up to her potential, or that Laser's not living up to his potential. And because technically Laser is her son and Joni is Nick's daughter, that it's something to do genetically, like why he's not living up to his potential or something of that nature. I don't know if any of that made any sense.
It does if you watched it. Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully I was able to explain it okay. I don't know. So anyway, later on at the restaurant, Paul is telling Tanya about the lunch, and she says, that's so good. I can tell that you're very happy about it. And we cut to Clay and Laser snooping around Laser's house, specifically his mom's room. And that's where they find a vibrator and some porn, and not knowing that it's gay porn until later when they're watching it. So Jules comes home and she walks into Laser's room while they're watching the gay porn so that way she can yell at him about leaving his bike in the driveway. And both boys just kind of look at her like,
what the fuck is this?
Then we cut to Nick and Jules having a conversation with Laser, specifically hinting at that they still love him unconditionally and that they're there for him if he wants to talk or ask about anybody or ask about anything. And he says, well, I don't really have something that I want to say, more so as something I want to ask. And he asks, like, why are you watching gay man porn?
I had that question too. So I'm so glad he asked.
And of course, they fumble over it. Like Jules is saying, human sexuality is weird. Like with women, so much of our pleasure is internalized, whereas like sometimes you just want to see it externalized. And she's making motions of like penises with her hands, and like it's very funny and awkward.
It's uncomfortable. Yeah.
So then they ask him if he's having a relationship with anybody that he can tell them. And Laser thinks that they're asking about Paul, that somehow they found out that Joni and him met up with Paul. And he says, oh, I only met him the one time. And they're like, wait, who did you meet one time? Because they're thinking that it's some creep on the internet or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, like Joni and I went to go meet Paul, our sperm donor. And then it clicks with Laser. And he's like, wait, you guys thought I was gay? So later on, the whole family sits down to talk about meeting Paul. Joni says that she wants to see him again, and Nick and Jules say that they're not going to meet with him again until they have met with him too. Next, Paul comes over to their house, and all 5 of them sit down for lunch in the backyard, and Nick starts peppering him with questions like, what got you into a career in the food industry? What's that like? It says that on your file that you were studying international relations in college. And then he says that he actually dropped out of college. And Nick is very unhappy with that. But
She took it very personal. Yeah.
yeah, she has very high standards and regards, and is a little bit of a judgmental person.
Yeah. Just a
That's how I would describe her. So then she asks if he's married, divorced, seeing anybody. And he says that he's never been married or divorced. And he's really just focused on his restaurant. And so he gives this really...
Just like a very like carefree,
Yeah.
cool guy.
Yeah. And
that.
she's really annoyed by it.
Yeah.
So later on, Paul asks how Nick and Jules met. And so they say that they met while they were at UCLA. Nick was a resident, and Jules came in with an emergency saying that her tongue was numb and like her whole face was numb. And then hints to later on, her tongue was no longer numb and she had feeling in her tongue again. And they laugh about that, and the kids are uncomfortable.
I don't blame them. I'm like, oh my God.
So then Paul asks like what each of them does, and he's like, oh, so Nick's a doctor. And he asks Jules what she does, and she said that she studied architecture in college, but she's not an architect. And then when the kids were growing up, she had a furniture import business that didn't do so well, and now she's working on building this landscaping business. And Nick asks Joni if she told Paul about her graduation speech, and she says no. And then they try and encourage her to go get her graduation speech, but she's not having it. And so then she goes and asks Laser to help her with something. So while the kids are away from the table, Paul tells Jules that he just bought this place and that he's really been meaning to get to some landscaping in the backyard, but he doesn't have the time for it. And so he wants to see if he can hire her.
I felt like that was so inappropriate.
Right.
Right? I
don't know if it's necessarily inappropriate per se. I think what happens next is extremely inappropriate.
Okay.
But
maybe not inappropriate, but it's like you don't even know this person. And then also, when he asked her about the business, she was so like, she sounded like undecided. Like nothing was set in stone. It was so flippy floppy. Like it was more of just like an idea as opposed to like something concrete. So then for like, essentially he's a stranger. For him to be like, oh yeah, well, let me hire you. Like, what? Like,
that's how you get business though. Like a lot of clients are just strangers, but she is a very flippant person.
Though. Like, because that's a weird, their situation I feel like is different than strangers. You know what I mean? But yeah, okay. I hated it. Yeah.
We cut to Jules and Nick at a store picking up landscaping supplies, and Nick is not happy about the situation to your point that you just mentioned. And Jules says, you're not happy when I don't have a job. You're not happy when I take the job. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm starting a business. You said that I need clients. So this is me getting a client. So then Jules goes to show up at Paul's place, which looks very dead. Like his whole yard just looks very dead.
Yeah. Neglected.
And so she's looking at the place, she's taking pictures, and she's deciding what they should do for the landscaping. She's giving out a couple of options, and they're both kind of wishy-washy people. And they're like, oh yeah, that'll be a great idea. Let's just do the overabundant, overgrown thing. Yeah. And so like they make that decision. And
on paper, they would make like the perfect couple. Just based on like their personalities.
I don't think anything would ever get done.
True. Exactly. No, but that's true.
So later on, we see that Joni is hanging out with her friends, Sasha and Jay, and she's showing them a picture of Paul, and Sasha thinks that he's super hot because he is. And Joni's like, that's gross. He's my biological dad. And so Sasha leaves, leaving Joni and Jay alone together. They have some very awkward, very innocent tension with one another because apparently they just like each other, but they're not willing to really talk or say or do anything about it. But then we see Jules and Laser are playing ping pong in the backyard when Nick comes out and tells him that he needs to sign a card. She's done everything to make it as easy as possible for him. She's bought the card. She put it on his table, like so on and so forth. And that if he doesn't sign the card, then they're not going to the Dodgers game on Saturday. And Laser says, that's fine because I already have plans with Paul anyway.
Oh my God, this scene annoyed me too. Because he was just being a little douchebag.
Yeah.
And at the
He's
end,
very...
I mean, he's moody. Yeah, whatever. But like, I think it's Jules. Like, she was just there. He was like talking back. He was giving her attitude. And she's just there, like a bystander who apparently, like, isn't it like when, I don't know what it's like to be a parent, but I would imagine if one kid is a cunt to another parent, maybe the other parent will step in and be like, hey, don't be an asshole. I imagine that's how it should work, but I don't know.
I don't know.
That's just
It
my
seems that Nick is highly critical of everything, including Jules.
So maybe that's why
makes
she
it
has
hard.
like more empathy or makes it more difficult to.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to live with people who are extremely critical of everything you do. And no matter what, you can never really live up to their standards.
I'm sure. Yeah. But I still hate him.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, the way that Joni and Laser really act towards their moms isn't the greatest. I think they're just all annoyed with each other.
Yeah. Yeah. But a part of me, I'm like, just smack the shit out of him.
Like, I'm over this.
I'm over it, man.
So then we cut to Paul hanging out with Laser and Clay. Laser's got a camcorder and Clay is on top of a roof. And so he's supposed to be skateboarding off of this roof onto like a dumpster or something like that. And when he goes to do it, he wipes out completely. He really messes up his arm.
So irresponsible. He's on a legit roof. Like a full
It is-
building. And thinks, oh, I'm just going to jump off. Like,
It is very apt 15-year-old behavior.
but at the same time, like, what grown adult would stand by and be like, yeah, I'm going to watch this?
Well, and I think for him too, he doesn't really know where he fits because he's
True.
just found out about them and is
Mhm.
like, where
He's
do you
probably trying
really
to, like,
interject?
yeah. No, I would do it for a stranger. I'd be like, get the fuck down. You idiot.
All right, so I'm taking you around to all the skateboarding parks. We're going to go save a couple kids' lives.
Yes.
Paul takes Clay home and he tells Laser that Clay is a tool after Clay gets inside his house. And Laser's like, you don't know him like I know him, trying to defend his friend, even though it's really half-hearted. But now Laser wants to have a different conversation with him. He says, why did you donate sperm? And Paul says that he really just wanted to help people and that he's glad that he did it. And then later on, maybe that evening, who knows, time is but a construct in this movie.
Who
There's
knows?
no real
don't
sense
know.
of like how long things are taking, when things are taking place.
Mhm.
All you know is night, day, middle of the day, and you never know which day it is. But later, Nick is setting up a bunch of candles around the bathroom, and Jules walks in asking what's going on. This is where Nick tells her, I've been on edge lately, and you've been so patient with me. So Nick has drawn Jules a sensual bath, and right before the bath is complete, she says, oh, I forgot the lavender bath salts. Let me go get those. And then we're left with Jules in the tub by herself for a very long time. She finally gets out of the tub and heads downstairs in a towel to find Nick on the phone with a patient talking about, I don't think that's contraction. I think that's just gas. Talking about labor pains. And she just mouths, I'm sorry. And Jules is fed up with it. Next, we cut to Jules at Paul's house working on the yard. And she's drawing up some sketches and asks him about the pie that he made. And she takes a bite and then tells him to take it away because it's dangerous. It's too damn good. And so she shows him the plans that she's drawn up and she asks if he's good with them. And he takes a moment to think about it and she completely freaks out because he's not saying anything. And he's like, well, we don't have to do that. We could do something else if you don't like it. And he says, no, I was just thinking about it. I think we should do this. And he tells her that she's really talented and she apologizes, saying that sometimes Nick can be really critical. And so she's not really sure how to handle silence sometimes. And then as they're saying goodbye, she kisses him and they make out for a minute and then she freaks out and leaves.
Oh my goodness.
This is where I think it gets inappropriate.
That's a bit beyond inappropriate. That's just a major F up.
We cut now to Joni in the co-op farm with Paul and they're harvesting some vegetables. And we see a cutaway scene where Clay and Laser are walking down an alley. Clay's got this makeshift cast on his arm. It's like got cardboard tape all over it. Like it's not a real cast. I don't, there's something wrong with this boy's home life. Like doesn't give him an excuse to act the way that he does, but there are people who are not taking care of this boy, I swear. Anyway, so while they're in the alleyway, a dog comes up to them and Clay decides it'd be hilarious to pee on the dog. And
I was so nervous because I thought he was going to like beat the dog. And I was so scared. And then he was like, let's pee on it. And then I was like, what the fuck?
I don't understand. Like, as I've mentioned before, I'm canonically not a guy, but I don't understand what the like obsession is with like peeing on things or like showing how much aim you have. I don't know.
I don't get it either. I'm going to ask Billy. I'm going to ask.
Yeah. You ask Billy, let me know. Laser pushes the dog away and tells him to run. And this is where him and Clay get into an altercation. Clay punches him in the face. And rather than engage with him, Laser just leaves. He's like, I'm sick of this shit.
Fairly impressed with that decision. I thought they were going to like brawl out. And I'm like,
very
wow,
mature.
good for him. Yeah, very mature of him.
Then we cut back to Joni and Paul. So earlier on in the movie, we established that Paul has a motorcycle and they had both said to him that both of their mothers would kill them if they were to ever ride a motorcycle. But now Joni's decided that it's okay if he gives her a ride home on his motorcycle. At home, Nick and Jules are waiting for Joni to come home. And that's when they hear Paul's motorcycle pull up and Nick comes out and she's extremely upset about the motorcycle. She says, you know how many people come into my hospital who are paralyzed because of motorcycle accidents? And Joni tells her, you know what? I'm 18. Too bad. If I want to ride a motorcycle, I'm going to ride a motorcycle. So then Paul interjects and says that maybe you should lay off some of the restrictions. And Nick is not having it.
The audacity of that guy.
Yeah. I can definitely see. I'm one of those people. I can see both sides. This is one of those few things where I'm just like, if we could just take both of these personalities and meld them into one, we'd probably be good in center.
Probably, yeah. Oh gosh. Well, yeah, she's critical and over the top, but like,
yeah, but you don't have a right just because you just found out that you're a sperm donor. You don't have the right to tell her
like,
how to parent.
Who are you? I know. Jesus Christ. Like I said, I hate everyone in this movie. I can't stand any of them.
Yeah, they're very interesting characters. I think they're very human.
I know. Maybe that's why I hate them.
Maybe that's why. It's because they're too human. Like you can see people acting like this, and it's just infuriating sometimes.
I know. And then once again, Jules, she just stands there.
Yeah,
doesn't interject at all. I feel like throughout this movie, she doesn't interject at all with any of the arguments or anything like that. So I'm like, why are you there?
I mean, when it comes to how much Nick drinks, she tries to get her to like change to water, or maybe that's enough glasses of wine.
Mm-hmm. Which is ironic because she says she's critical.
Right. Well, it seems like Nick becomes more of an asshole when she's had a few glasses of wine to drink.
Oh, probably. I couldn't tell. I felt like she was the same before and after.
Yeah.
I didn't see a huge difference with the alcohol consumption.
So anyway, Nick then goes to apologize to Joni. But Joni says, I know how you feel about them, but I'm an adult and you have to respect my choices, and then closes the door. So we cut back to Paul's house when Jules is working out in the yard, and Paul is out on like an observation deck looking down and sees that Jules has a whale tail.
And the gardener keeps blocking it.
He keeps trying to move around to see it, and the gardener keeps walking around.
Poor gardener.
And then
goodness.
the gardener looks up and he tries to play like he wasn't doing anything. Later, Jules goes into his house and apologizes for Nick from the night before, and then they kiss, and then they go to Bone Town. Another very awkward sex scene. So awkward. But then they're also interrupted by her gardener because
it's the middle of the workday and he's just trying to do his job. So sorry. And like, she's so offended by it. She's like, what? What? Like,
I think she's being judgmental of herself and she doesn't want other people to judge her.
Oh, man.
So she hastily puts on her clothes and walks outside to answer his question. He wants to know where the stones go, and she tells him, but then he notices that she doesn't have any shoes on, and she's like, what? I went to the bathroom.
Do you need to use the bathroom? Oh, this woman's a hot mess.
So we cut to Paul and Laser playing basketball, and Laser asks whether he would want to be buried or cremated. Laser says that he would like to be cremated. Paul says that he'd like to be buried, and then Laser keeps asking him and peppering him with why. And he's like, but that's taking up too much room in the ground. But you're going to be dead. Why would it matter whether or not people can come visit your grave?
I know. He almost seems offended by his answer.
I know. Well, and then the other point of it is like, there's no real point to this conversation. I think it's more so just to show the interactions between them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're building a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime we cut to Joni and her friend Sasha, who's the very sex positive, annoying one, at Paul's restaurant. Sasha is talking to Tanya, who's one of the workers at the restaurant, and comments and compliments her necklace. And then Sasha tells her after Tanya has left the table, your donor dad is giving me a sex vibe.
I felt that too.
Really? Oh my gosh. I didn't notice at all.
It's not weird, but like, he put his hands on her shoulders and was like talking about something. And I was like, that's weird.
I wasn't paying attention to that part.
Oh, okay. I was like,
either
girl,
way,
I'm feeling that vibe too. Like, I was like, that's weird. I'm uncomfortable.
I don't know. To me, she just looks like 15. And I'm like, nope.
Oh.
No, knowing full well that does happen in real life.
Yeah.
But in my head, I'm just like, that's not appropriate. This is Mark Ruffalo here. He's a little bit more sensible than that.
Is he? I don't know if his...
to at least sleep with somebody over age? Yeah.
Oh, no. Aren't they both 18? I would imagine they're
supposed to
same
be,
age.
yeah.
Yeah.
But to me, she just looks 15.
Technically. I don't think guys care about that.
I know, which is the scary thing.
That is so gross.
But
I find it so gross that, like, they automatically feel like it's okay. Oh, she's 18. It's okay. Like, it's a switch. Like, what? Ew.
Like that happened with like Lindsay Lohan and Britney Spears. They're like, she's 18. It's legal. Everything's legal now.
So gross. Such a red flag.
Oh, I had a friend who sent me this thing. It was so funny. If my friend Kelsey is listening, she sent me this thing, and it says, every woman I've ever talked to has been a bit embarrassed about who she dated when she was 19. Like, it was pretty much the lowest of her dating standards. So it's really funny to see grown men be proud of dating 19-year-olds.
Oh my gosh. Ew.
So anyway, Joni is not having it. She's very annoyed with her friend Sasha. But then we cut to Nick and Jules having dinner with some friends, and they think it's really great that the kids are getting along with Paul. You hear so often about people meeting their donor parents, and it doesn't go well. And then they start talking about the acai bowls that are really popular at that time. And The husband says, I make mine with acai and some hemp milk and so on and so forth. And Nick flips out at the word hemp milk. And she's like, I'm so over this organic. And you know what? We're composting now. And I'm getting told that you can't throw that away. It's supposed to go in the compost. And I'm over all this hemp milk, this alternative nonsense. And
She's over the hippy dippy shit.
she is. She's like, no, none of it. This is when Jules asks her if she wants some green tea instead of some wine. And Nick just tells her flat out, I like my wine. And she leaves to go to the bar. And Jules goes after her. Nick tells her, I think it's just this Paul thing. I'm very overwhelmed and just stressed out. And it feels like he's taking over the whole family. And Jules says, maybe she should just take some time off. She's trying to be sweet and concerned and empathetic. And Nick says, well, who's going to pay for that? And this is when Jules and her kind of get into it. She says, but you like it this way. So you can have more control. When I was working, you hated it. You always wanted to be home, wanted me home with the kids. Like, you like being able to say that you're paying for everything and that you're the one who's taking care of the family and stuff like that. And so Jules then asks Nick if she even finds her attractive anymore. And Nick just doesn't really answer. And then we cut to another very awkward sex scene between Jules and Paul. Like straight into
This
it.
one was even more awkward.
I know. It was like pseudo rough, but mostly like not sure what to do rough.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
This is so awkward. Afterwards, they're talking and Jules is saying how much she wants a cigarette. She hasn't had a cigarette since Laser was born. And then Joni ends up calling Paul and Jules freaks out and heads outside as fast as humanly possible, where she runs into the gardener. And she berates this poor man. She says that he's giving her a look. And he says, no, I'm not giving you a look. This is just my face. And she tells him that this isn't going to work. And she fires him on the spot, basically, because she's too embarrassed about the fact that she's having an affair with her children's donor dad.
Oh my God. What a cunt. I was so mad at this
Yes.
scene. I was like, are you kidding me? This poor man is just trying to make a living. And then because you're having an
she's
affair
having
here.
a midlife crisis. Like-
Exactly. I'm like, oh God.
So we cut to everybody having breakfast, and Nick tells the family that she wants to change the friction that's been happening between Paul and the family, mostly between Paul and her. So she thinks that they should have dinner at Paul's house, which I think is extremely presumptuous to invite yourself over to somebody's house for dinner.
I know. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't even like bother.
Excuse me?
She made all the plans already without involving him. I'm like,
So
okay.
Jules gets very uncomfortable saying, oh no, the yard's not done yet. I don't want you to see it yet. And Nick says, I want to see more of the process. I want to be more involved. So then we cut to Jules at Paul's again. And she says, we can't be doing this. And cut to them having sex right again. That's how it always goes. You say, nope, we can't do this anymore. I'm breaking it off. And then you head straight back into bed together.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The only difference is in this post-sex conversation, Paul says, I think I'm falling for you.
Oh, goodness.
So Jules then goes and takes a shower in his shower. We cut to Paul and Tanya. I don't know why I put Tanya and Sasha. We cut to Paul and Sasha. I said it again. We cut to Paul and Tanya talking at the end of the workday. The restaurant's closed and he seems to be like crunching numbers or something like that. And Tanya tells him that she's missed having their sleepovers. And Paul says, I think you're really beautiful and super sexy, but I'm really sorry. I don't think we can do this anymore. He eventually wants to settle down with somebody. And
He says, you ain't it. He straight up,
Pretty
he's like,
much.
you're not it.
just like, fuck you. And she
Yep.
leaves.
As she should. Quit too.
I was like,
Never
I
came
don't
back.
know. Did you ever ask her if that's what she wanted?
That's
If
what
she
I was
wanted more?
wondering too. Yeah. I'm like, way to assume, dude.
So then we cut to everybody getting into the car to go to Paul's, but Jewel is really nervous and hesitant. She's lingering back. And then she finally gets into the car at Paul's. Jules is showing the yard to Nick and explaining, we're going to do a little bit of this here. We got some greenery over there. blah, 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 blah. And Nick says, oh, this is so great. And she's actually seems to be very sincere about it. So inside the house, the kids are all in the kitchen helping Paul get dinner together. And Nick is hanging out in the living room, checking out his vinyl collection, making sure that he has good taste in music when she finds that he has a Joni Mitchell record. At dinner, Nick is being very cordial and she passes on the wine and she compliments the steak. And then she compliments his record collection, specifically the fact that he has this Joni Mitchell record, and explains that Joni is named Joni after Joni Mitchell. How many times can I say Joni in one sentence? They have an entire conversation about Joni Mitchell. Nick asks Paul what his favorite album is. Then she starts singing to one of the songs and Paul joins in. You can see the uncomfortableness in Jules' face the entire time. And then Nick goes to the bathroom and says that she's changed her mind about the wine and she'll take a glass after all.
To me, it almost felt like Jules was uncomfortable with the fact that they were starting to get along.
It could be. I thought she was just uncomfortable because she's been having this affair with him and she didn't want Nick to be any closer.
Yeah, that too. Oh, for sure. But I don't know. For like a second, it almost looked like in her facial expressions, like, wait, what is going on here? Why?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it was very nice when they were getting along. It was a little uncomfortable, but it was nice.
It was uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah. They did a little duet. It was awkward for everyone.
While in the bathroom, she notices Jules' hair in the hairbrush and then also in the tub. So apparently, I don't know how much hair Jules is losing at any given time. Like, I lose a decent amount of hair when I take a shower and stuff like that, but it's not like globs of hair. Like, how does this woman still have hair on her head? I'm so confused.
I lose globs, but I have a lot of hair.
She doesn't appear to
She
does not
want much. This is over time, though. Who knows how many times they've banged?
No, that's
and
true.
She showers.
We've seen at least 3.
At least 3. We don't know what time is in this movie. It could have been over a long time, and he's just really gross and never cleans his bathroom.
Have you seen any guy clean their bathroom?
Nope.
So anyway, Nick then continues on and investigates Paul's room and finds Jules's hair scrunchie on his nightstand. And then Nick eventually returns to the table and everything turns to slow-mo as the weight of her discovery is crashing in on her. This is where nobody else is noticing it, by the way. So Paul makes a toast to unconventional family. They all toast. And then we cut to later that evening when Jules is brushing her teeth and complimenting Nick on how well Paul and her were getting along. And this is where Nick asks straight up, you and Paul are sleeping together, aren't you? And Jules is a very bad liar. She can't even begin to lie. Which,
she tries, but very badly.
She does. She's like, what are you talking about? I took a shower there because I'm working in the garden. I'm dirty. So Nick then asks whether or not she's in love with him, and she says flat out no, that she's just felt so far away from Nick and that she just really wanted to feel appreciated. Nick then tells Jules that she couldn't have picked a more hurtful way to cheat on her. So Nick goes to leave and opens the door to see that the kids are hanging out right outside the stair landing. We cut to Jules on the couch. She tries to go and talk to the kids, and Joni tells her that she doesn't want to talk to her. And then she talks to Laser, and he tells him that what they're doing is over, and then he can talk to her about anything if he needs to. And he's not terribly phased about it at this moment. He's just kind of like, okay.
He doesn't seem to care.
I think he's still processing.
Yeah, probably just still processing. She was like,
yeah.
You want to ask me anything? He's like, no. Like.
So the next morning, Nick completely ignores Jules and heads straight to work. Joni is then talking with Sasha, and Paul calls Joni on the phone, and she just tells him straight out that he's a shit person for sleeping with her mom. And then he calls Jules and says that he just talked to Joni. He's like, what the fuck's happening? And Joni's like, ugh, really? And he explains, well, let's just do this thing. Let's give it 100% commitment now. It's all out in the open. You should just leave and take the kids and we can be together. And she's like, I'm gay. And she hangs up on him.
I know. I was like, what a stupid guy answer.
I know.
I was like, what?
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
We cut to Joni at a party with her friends, and she's taking shots. She's getting 18-year-old wasted. So from that point in time, though, she finally gets that liquid courage to go up to Jay, compliment the fact that she thinks that his little bit of scruff is sexy, and then flat out starts making out with him. And he is stunned. He is completely in disbelief about anything that's happening. And she's a little upset, and he asks her what's wrong. And rather than talk about anything, she just straight up does and ditches the party.
Also, that makeout session was so awkward.
Super
Also-
awkward. I felt like half the time they were just like nuzzling each other's necks.
Yeah, she was like going back and forth. I
Yeah.
was like, what are you doing?
So I think I told you I'm rewatching Gilmore Girls right now. And so
Oh.
like a couple episodes ago is when Rory breaks up with Logan at the wedding, and Doyle and her meet at the bar, and he says
Oh, yeah.
that Paris kicked him out, and then they go to leave, and she hands
I
him
remember that.
her coat, and then they hug, and he starts to nuzzle and kiss her neck with tongue or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what that reminded me of.
yeah.
Oh, so funny. We cut back to the house, and Jules goes upstairs and tells Nick that she wants another pillow because the couch is uncomfortable, and Nick tells her that she should take a Tylenol or an Advil or something like that. As Jules is coming downstairs, Joni comes home, and Jules asks how the party was, and then she notices that she's stumbling quite a bit, and she asks whether or not Joni's drunk. And Joni says, I'm not drunk, and explains that she's sick of both of them, and she slams the door.
Also, she drank and drove.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that they were like, oh, okay. And, like, how do you not, like, just flip out on a child? I don't know. I guess that's not healthy. But I'm just like, oh my God.
So I'm guessing this is your new favorite movie, is what
Yeah.
you're telling me.
Yes.
So we cut to what I think is the next day, and Joni is packing up for college. And later that evening at dinner, Nick is asking Joni if she's got everything packed. And Jules says that she can't believe this is her last dinner at home. Just at that time, there's a knock on the door. Joni says, I think it's Sasha, and she goes to answer it. And she is annoyed as hell that he's there. And he says, I'm so sorry. I just needed to talk to you before you left for college. I didn't really want this to happen. And Joni asks whether or not all of this was just bullshit. You know, you trying to get to know us, was that even real, kind of a thing? And he says, no, this isn't bullshit. I really do care about you, and I want to be able to see you again in the future. And she says, I don't know if that's possible. She says that I just wish you could have been better. At that point in time, Nick goes to the door and confronts him, telling him that he's got a lot of balls, which he does, for confronting them, and says, if you want a family so much, go out and make your own, and slams the door in his face. So after all of that commotion's died down, Nick, Joni, and Laser are all watching TV, which it looks like the only TV channel these people watch is Discovery, which I'm not throwing shade at. I love the Discovery Channel, but it's just so funny that they only just watch Discovery or National
Discovery
Geographic
fans,
or
I
something.
guess. Yeah.
But that's when Jules comes in, she interrupts and turns off the TV and says, I have something that I need to say. Marriage is hard. Sometimes you're together so long that you don't really see each other. And sometimes you go off and make stupid choices. Sometimes you hurt the ones you love the most and you don't even know why. And ultimately, she's very, very, very sorry for what she did. And then she leaves. She exits stage right. And Nick is crying. But it seems like things are starting to mend a little bit. The next day, Joni's all packed up in the car for college, and the family tries to once they get to the college, all of them help Joni take stuff into her dorm room, and they're starting to unpack things, but she's a little overwhelmed, and she asks for a minute, and they're like, oh, okay. So they head outside, and she begins to start putting things together, like her bed, and all of a sudden she realizes how quiet it is, and she thinks that they've all left. And so she runs outside, and she catches them all in the car, And Nick says, we just had to go move the car. And this is the point where they all have this very sentimental goodbye and they all hug each other. And now Joni's in college. On the drive back, Laser tells Nick and Jules, I don't think you guys should break up. And Nick is like, oh yeah, why is that? And he's like, because I think you're too old. They all chuckle a little bit, and Jules and Nick hold hands. That is the end. So it does pass the Bechdel test, thankfully. When you got two lesbians in a movie, it should.
Let's hope so.
Some fun trivia is that Mark Ruffalo actually only had 6 days to film his role.
Wow.
And he actually based the performance on his charismatic brother who died not long before filming started. In his grief and disillusionment with his career, he honestly believed this would be his last acting performance and was thinking about going into directing. But after seeing how the audience reacted to the film at Sundance, he actually changed his mind about quitting acting.
I had heard about like him basing a character off his brother. I had no idea it was this one. I almost feel bad for hating it so much. Oops.
Much of the film is based upon co-writer and director Lisa Cholodenko's relationship with her partner, Wendy, who both had a son by a sperm donor. Cholodenko dedicated this film to them. So Annette Bening's favorite scene is when Jules and Nick are telling Paul about how they first met and watching Joni and Laser cringe at the erotic details of it. So the film's title, The Kids Are All Right, is based on the song titled The Kids Are All Right by The Who. And we don't really talk about it a whole lot, but Paul's restaurant is named WYSIWYG, which is an abbreviation for what you see is what you get, which is perhaps commentary on what his character is like.
How do you even pronounce that? Like, hey, do you want to go to
Weissawig.
Weisswig? Weisswig.
Weissawig.
Weisswig.
Let's go to Weissawig. And then last but not least, Jodie Foster, who wasn't out at the time, turned down the role for Nick. So I went and I looked it up and I was like, wait, Jodie Foster's out? What does that mean? She has a wife. Her name is Alexandra.
Oh.
Are you ready for your favorite part?
Yes.
On the caffeine scale of 1 to 5 espresso shots, how stimulated did this movie keep you?
Oh my gosh, it's almost a 4 or 5 just because of how irritated I was. Just because I hated everyone, I don't think it was a bad movie just because I hated the characters. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Honestly, 4 or 5 for me just because I got everything. I was like, what the fuck? What are you doing? What is wrong with you?
That just goes to show that the word stimulated can either be positive
it can be positive or negative. Yep. Had my blood boiling sometimes.
Oh. I think I was busy. I was too busy laughing at just the very awkward sex scenes. So for me, this is more like a 2. I'm like, okay.
Oh no.
I could not watch this again. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to watch it again either.
Which is astounding. It's got such a star-studded cast. Like I love Julianne Moore. I love Mark Ruffalo.
Mm-hmm.
You got Josh Hutcherson. Like he's just been such a famous like child actor.
Oh yeah.
All these people. And I'm like, all right, this kind of reminds me of the time that I watched Friends with Money. And I'm like, I'm good without this movie.
Oh no. Some of these Sundance movies are just like, I don't know. They're just oneers. Like you don't want to come back to them. Which doesn't mean
enough.
Yeah, which doesn't mean they're bad movies. Like I don't think at all. I think they all did incredible, phenomenal jobs acting.
Yeah.
like
I said earlier, I think they are based in some kind of reality. Like all of their characters have realistic parts to them.
Yeah,
I can
the director has. Yeah, I can see it too. It's just sometimes that's just not what we want to see. I watch movies to escape reality sometimes. I don't want it in my face. I don't.
So what do you think of this movie ending our family drama month is what I've decided it is actually.
Family drama. That's more appropriate.
Yeah. Because I was going over the movies in my head. And I was like, okay, we did A League of Their Own, There's a lot of drama between the sisters.
Mhm.
We did Chronicles of Narnia. There's a lot of drama between them.
Oh,
We did Little Miss Sunshine. Lots of drama there.
Mhm.
And then we did this movie and I was like, oh my gosh, this is only drama.
a lot. I know.
So this is actually a family drama month.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Good
So
feedback.
what do you think now that we are done with our family drama month? How do you think
I'm
that this
over it.
movie
It was-
ended it?
I'm ready for Christmas. I'm so done.
Oh, I'm so
Yes.
glad. Well, yeah. So to that point, December will be our holiday movie month, as it should be. So get ready for some fun holiday movies to come your way.
I'm so excited for those.
All right. So I will talk to you later.
Perfect. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Caffeinated Flicks. We're a self-published podcast produced and edited by Kenzie.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what films you'd like us to cover, what we can do better, or just say hi.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can follow us on Instagram at Caffeinated Flicks Pod or email us at caffeinatedflicks@gmail.com. We'll catch you on the flick side.